I slept alone, then a wolf woman moved in overnight the first night I slept in the cabin. The silence felt like a living thing. I'd moved up into the mountains to disappear for a while, away from the breakup, away from the city noise, away from the little humiliations that come from being seen when you don't feel like yourself. The realtor called the place rustic. I called it cheap. One room, one stove, one narrow bed, and a porch that stared into a wall of pine. No neighbors. No signal unless you climbed a boulder behind the shed. Perfect. At midnight, after the last log popped in the stove and the last crickets settled, a howl rolled across the tree line. It wasn't theatrical. It was real, long, low, and patient, like the mountain had lungs and decided to sigh. I told myself wolves lived out here, that the sound belonged far away, that it wasn't about me. Then came footsteps, soft at first like pads on needles. Then a faint crunch of twig, deliberate, as if whoever was walking wanted me to know they were there. The steps circled the cabin once, twice. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling knots, trying to breathe quietly. The steps stopped in front of my door. Silence pressed in. I waited for scratching, for a slam, for something to crash through the window. Nothing. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under, but my sleep was thin and splintered. In my dreams, amber eyes watched from between the trees, unblinking. Morning made everything look harmless. Sunlight warmed the porch boards. Birds argued in the branches. The woods smelled clean. Then I saw the prints. Paw marks on the porch, big, heavy, too long to be any dog I knew. They made a slow circle around my door like someone pacing with purpose. And between two prints sat a single gray feather, clean as if it had been placed there. A feather in wolf tracks. I held it up, expecting it to be wet or torn. It was soft and almost warm. "All right," I muttered to the empty woods. "That's new." All day I kept busy with practical chores, pretending I didn't keep checking the tree line. I fixed a hinge, stacked more firewood, tried to convince myself I was overreacting. At midnight the howl returned, closer than before. Then came 3 knocks on the door, slow, deliberate, human. I grabbed the fireplace poker and stood in the center of the room, heart drumming in my throat. The doorknob turned. The lock held. Another knock, firmer. And then a voice, soft and female, from the other side. "Let me in." My mouth went dry. "Who are you?" A pause, like she was choosing how much truth to give. "I live here," she said. "This is my cabin," I managed. "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm asking." The porch light flickered once, as if some invisible finger had tapped the bulb. I swallowed and tried to think like a sensible adult. Stranger at door at midnight. Forest. No neighbors. Don't open. Then beneath the voice, I heard a sound that didn't belong to any ordinary stranger. Something between a whimper and a growl, strained with pain. "If I don't come in," she said, quieter now, "they'll find me." "They," I whispered. "Hunters." The word landed like a stone. Outside, beyond the porch, I caught a glint through the window, metal, then the brief shadow of a moving figure among the trees. The woman at the door spoke again, urgent but controlled. "They can't cross your threshold unless you let them. But they'll burn this place to smoke me out if they know I'm here." My grip on the poker tightened. I didn't have time to decide what I believed. I only knew something was on my porch and other people were in my yard with weapons. I unlocked the door. Cold air rushed in like water. Then she stepped into the doorway and my thoughts stumbled. She was tall, wrapped in a dark coat that looked too thin for the night. Her hair was a tangle of silver black, damp with frost. Her eyes were amber, bright, predatory, and unmistakably intelligent. Not drunk, not lost, not ordinary. Behind her the trees shifted with hidden movement. Close it, she said. I slammed the door and shoved the deadbolt down. She exhaled a slow release, then looked around my cabin as if recognizing an old shape. Thank you, she said. I swallowed. Who are you really? She turned her face toward the window, listening. Lark, she said. That's what you can call me. Outside, a man's voice carried through the logs. We know you're in there. Another voice, closer. Open up and hand over the animal. Animal. The word made something in Lark's expression sharpen. Don't, I warned, though I wasn't sure who I was warning, her or myself. Lark moved to the window and peered through a sliver of curtain. They're close, she murmured. If they see me leave, they'll chase. If they know I'm here, they'll make this cabin a bonfire. My stomach dropped. Why are they after you? Her gaze slid to the gray feather on my table. Recognition flickered. Because I'm the story they grew up hating, she said, and because some men think every wild thing should fit on a leash. The hunters knocked hard enough to rattle the frame. Permits, the leader shouted. Law says we can take her. Lark's lips curled, showing the hint of a canine tooth. The law, she echoed like it tasted bitter. She pressed her palm against the wall beside the door. For a breath, nothing happened. Then the air hummed, subtle, like a tuning fork struck somewhere inside the wood. The cabin felt heavier, more rooted, as if it had lowered its shoulders. Outside, the hunters fell silent. A low growl rolled through the logs, not from Lark's throat, but from the house itself, from the land beneath it. A warning in a language older than shouting. A curse hissed outside. She marked the place. Boots retreated into the leaves. My lungs finally remembered to work. You did that, I said, stunned. Lark's shoulders sagged slightly, like the effort cost her. This cabin sits on a seam, she said, a boundary your kind built on without asking what it separates. Are you a werewolf? I asked, the word feeling ridiculous in my mouth. Lark blinked, then sighed. That word is too small, she said. But yes, wolf, woman, both, neither, depending. I stared at her hands, bare, strong, nails a little too dark and long. So what now? I asked. Now I stay, she said. Overnight, until moonset. If I leave while their eyes are on the trees, they'll follow. If I rest, the pull eases, then I can slip away. You can't just move in, I protested, but the cabin was suddenly too small for the idea of sending her back into the cold with rifles waiting. Lark looked at me, and for the first time I saw something like exhaustion behind the brightness of her gaze. I'm not asking to be your guest, she said quietly. I'm asking for shelter. There's a difference. I didn't have a good answer. So I made tea because my hands needed something to do and watched her wrap both palms around the mug as if heat was a memory. In the lamplight, her scars showed. A thin line in one eyebrow, a pale mark at her throat, old injuries, human cruelty in delicate handwriting. Why do they hate you? I asked. Lark stared into the steam. Because their fathers told them stories to keep them from coming up here, she said. Because fear makes good fences. And when children grow up, some decide fences are insults. So they come to prove they're not afraid, I said, and to take trophies, she replied, to sell, to study, to brag. The thought made my stomach twist. And you, what did you do? Lark's mouth tightened. I broke a rule, she said. I saved a human once. That's a rule, I asked. In my world, she said, contact becomes attachment. Attachment becomes weakness. Weakness becomes blood. Did the human betray you? I asked. Lark's eyes lifted to mine, steady, sad. He grew up, she said. That was enough. Outside, somewhere behind the cabin, something thudded against the wall. I jumped. Lark was on her feet instantly, body coiled like a spring. Another thud, then scraping, metal dragged along wood. A man's voice, muffled but clear. "We can wait all winter, sweetheart." Lark's nostrils flared. A low growl vibrated in her chest, and for a second the air smelled sharp like lightning. "Don't go out," I whispered. She didn't answer. She only listened, eyes half closed, mapping the forest with senses I couldn't imagine. Then she did the strangest thing of all. She walked to my bed. "I'm sleeping," she said. "Now," I hissed. "They're outside." "They want me tired," she replied. "Reckless, if I fight angry, I lose," my voice cracked. "What about me?" Lark looked back at me, head tilted. "You sleep too," she said, "if you can." "I can't just—" She stepped closer, and her scent filled my lungs, pine, smoke, something wild and clean. "You invited me in," she said softly. "That means something to them, to the land." "And to you?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her expression shifted, almost amused. "To me," she said, "it means I won't sleep alone tonight." My heart kicked. My brain helpfully tried to make this about romance and danger and fantasy, anything except the truth that had dragged me out here in the first place. I was tired of being alone. We lay on the bed with a careful space between us, like strangers sharing shelter in a storm. The cabin creaked as the temperature dropped. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, one sharp, angry sound, then another. Lark's throat rumbled with a warning so low I felt it in the mattress. The barking stopped. I stared at the dark ceiling, stunned. "You can control them," I whispered. Lark's voice came, drowsy but certain. "I can remind them what they are," she said, "and what I am." Minutes passed, my heartbeat slowly untangled from panic. I listened to her breathing, steady, deep, not quite human, and felt an unfamiliar safety settle over me like a cloak. In the thin space before sleep, I whispered, "Why did you circle my porch last night?" Lark shifted slightly. "I smelled loneliness," she admitted. "And I wondered what kind of creature chooses it." "I didn't choose it," I said too fast. "It just happened." A pause, then gently, "Loneliness always pretends to be weather," she murmured. "But it's built piece by piece." My eyes stung. I blamed smoke from the stove. Sleep finally took me. I dreamed of running, not fleeing, but flying over the forest on 4 strong legs, lungs full of winter. I dreamed of moonlight on fur and laughter that sounded like growling. I dreamed of a cabin glowing like a lantern on the edge of a great dark sea. When I woke, dawn was leaking through the window. Lark was already sitting up, alert, listening. In morning light, her face looked softer, almost human, but her eyes were still amber, awake in a way mine never were. "They're gone," I whispered. "For now," she said. She stood and looked out the window. "Moonset," she murmured. "The pull is easing. I can leave." My chest tightened, surprising me. "So that's it?" I asked. "You just go?" Lark turned. "Do you want me to stay?" she asked. I didn't have an easy answer. Wanting her here felt like inviting danger to dinner, and yet the cabin had never felt less empty than it had with her breathing beside me. "They'll come back," I said. "Yes," she replied, honest. "And if you're here, they'll keep coming." "Also, yes." I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. "I came here to be alone. I didn't sign up to be part of some mountain war." Lark's expression softened. "None of us sign up," she said. "But you arrived on a boundary and called it yours. Boundaries don't stay quiet." She walked to the table and picked up the gray feather, then placed it carefully in my palm. "A mark," she said. "Not ownership, not a curse, a promise." "What promise?" I asked. "That you're not alone on this land anymore," she replied. "If you hear the howl again, you can answer." A crunch of leaves outside snapped our attention. One boot step, not close but not far. Lark's eyes narrowed. They left a watcher. My stomach sank. What do we do? Lark looked at me like she'd been waiting for this question since she knocked. You choose, she said. You can leave, let them have the seam, let them keep hunting until the forest is only a story. And if I stay, her smile showed a hint of tooth. Then you stop being prey, she said. You become a door that doesn't open for monsters. My hands trembled, but something stubborn rose under the fear, something I hadn't felt since before the breakup, before the hollowing out. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was wild. I walked to the door and rested my fingers on the deadbolt. I took a breath and listened, not just with my ears, but with that quiet part of me that had dreamed of running. I could feel the watcher at the tree line like a thorn in the air. I could feel the cabin's weight on the seam, the land humming underneath. And I could feel Lark behind me, not pushing, not pleading, only present like a truth. I opened the door. Cold air bit my cheeks. The porch was empty, but at the edge of the trees a man stood half-hidden, rifle slung over his shoulder. He looked surprised to see me. I raised my voice. "This land is private," I called. "Turn around and leave," he sneered. "You don't know what you've got in there." I lifted the gray feather. It looked small, ridiculous, until the wind caught it and the air seemed to deepen, like the forest recognized a signal. "I know enough," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Leave." For a second, the watcher hesitated. Then a low growl rolled from behind me, not from Lark's throat, from the cabin, from the boundary, from the mountain itself. The watcher's face drained pale. He backed away, boots catching on roots, then turned and vanished into the trees. I stood on the porch until my shaking eased. When I turned, Lark was in the doorway, watching me with bright approval. "You answered," she said. "I guess I did," I breathed. She stepped closer and touched my shoulder, brief grounding. "Good," she murmured, "because overnight is never just one night." "What does that mean?" I asked. Lark's smile was fierce and quiet. "It means I moved in," she said, "and the mountain noticed." Lark didn't leave that morning, not all the way. She stepped off the porch, blurred at the edges, and became a shadow slipping between trunks, close enough that the air still held her scent. I spent the day repairing the door frame, setting fresh ash around the threshold the way she showed me, and learning the quiet difference between ordinary forest sounds and warning sounds. At sunset, I found another feather on the step, white this time. A soft invitation. Somewhere deep in the forest, a howl rose, not angry this time, but recognizing. Like a name spoken aloud, I didn't flinch, I listened. Then, softly, I answered,